As visitors meandered through the primate exhibit at the bustling local zoo, a sense of curiosity hung in the air. Among the lively crowd, one particular chimp stood out from the rest. With an air of urgency, it fixated on a visitor's backpack, pointing towards it with an insistent gesture. The visitor, taken aback by the chimp's persistent behavior, called over a nearby zookeeper for assistance. Both puzzled and intrigued, the zookeeper approached the scene, wondering what could possibly be the cause of the chimp's fascination with the innocent backpack. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. It was a bright Saturday morning, and the zoo buzzed with life. Families wandered along winding paths, children pointing excitedly at the animals behind glass enclosures. The air was filled with laughter, chatter, and the distant calls of exotic creatures. But amid the cheerful chaos, something unusual was unfolding in the primate exhibit. In the chimpanzee enclosure, a single chimp stood apart from the rest. His name was Charlie, and visitors often marveled at his intelligence and playful antics. But today, Charlie wasn't swinging from branches or entertaining the crowd with his usual charm. Instead, he sat quietly, staring intently at a visitor standing close to the glass barrier. The visitor, a young woman named Emily, was busy taking pictures of the other chimps. At first, she didn't notice Charlie's unwavering gaze, but gradually she felt a strange sensation, as if someone were watching her closely. She turned slowly, her eyes meeting Charlie's intense stare. Charlie raised his long, hairy arm and pointed directly at Emily's backpack. His eyes widened, and he bobbed his head urgently, as if trying desperately to communicate something important. Emily glanced down at her backpack, puzzled. It was an ordinary bag, worn from daily use, containing nothing special, just her wallet, keys, a water bottle, and a few snacks. She looked back at Charlie, confused by his persistence. "What's wrong, buddy?" she asked softly, stepping closer to the glass. Charlie became more agitated, pointing even more insistently at the backpack. His gestures were clear and purposeful, his eyes pleading. Emily felt a chill run down her spine. Something was wrong, but she couldn't understand what. A small crowd began to gather around Emily, drawn by the chimp's unusual behavior. Murmurs spread among the visitors, curiosity growing. Emily felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, unsure how to react. "Maybe he wants food?" someone suggested. "No, that's not allowed," another visitor replied. "They have strict diets." Emily felt increasingly uneasy. She glanced around nervously, then spotted a zookeeper nearby, a middle-aged man named Dan who had worked at the zoo for over 20 years. She waved him over urgently. Dan approached quickly, sensing something unusual was happening. He noticed Charlie's frantic gestures immediately. "What's going on here?" Dan asked, his voice calm but concerned. Emily pointed toward Charlie. "I don't know. He keeps pointing at my backpack. He's acting like something's wrong." Dan studied Charlie closely. He had known this chimp since it was a baby, and he'd never seen him behave this way. Charlie was usually playful, curious, and mischievous, but now he seemed genuinely distressed. "Let me see your backpack," Dan said gently, reaching out his hand. Emily hesitated briefly, then handed it over. Dan carefully examined it, feeling the weight and shape. Nothing seemed unusual. Still, Charlie continued to gesture urgently, his eyes wide with anxiety. Dan glanced back at the chimp, then slowly unzipped the backpack. The crowd leaned in, holding their breath, eager to see what had caused such a strange reaction. At first, Dan saw nothing unusual. Wallet, keys, water bottle, granola, bars, very thing seemed normal. But then he noticed something small and furry tucked at the very bottom, hidden beneath a folded sweater. His breath caught sharply. Carefully, he reached in and lifted out a tiny, trembling kitten. Its fur was matted, its eyes wide with fear. It mewed weakly, shivering in Dan's gentle hands. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Emily's eyes widened in shock. "Oh my goodness! How did that get in there?" Dan cradled the kitten gently, examining it closely. "It must have crawled in when you weren't looking. Maybe while you were at home or on your way here. Poor little thing." Charlie watched intently, visibly relaxing as soon as the kitten was safely in Dan's hands. He lowered his arm, his expression softening into relief. Emily felt tears welling up in her eyes. "Is it okay?" Dan nodded reassuringly. "It's scared and hungry, but it seems healthy. I'll take it to our vet to make sure." Emily looked back at Charlie, who now sat quietly, watching them calmly. She placed her hand gently on the glass, smiling softly at the chimp. "Thank you, Charlie, you saved this little one's life." Charlie tilted his head slightly, as if acknowledging her gratitude. Then he turned and ambled back toward the other chimps, resuming his usual playful demeanor as if nothing had happened. Word of the incident spread quickly throughout the zoo. Visitors whispered excitedly, pointing toward the primate enclosure, eager to catch a glimpse of the heroic chimp. Staff members marveled at Charlie's intelligence and empathy, proud of the animal they'd cared for and nurtured. Emily stayed at the zoo for hours, unable to leave until she knew the kitten was safe. Eventually, Dan returned, smiling warmly. "The vet says the kitten is fine, just hungry and scared. We'll find it a good home." Emily felt relief flood through her. "Can I see it?" Dan nodded, leading her to a small office behind the primate exhibit. Inside, the kitten lay curled up in a soft blanket, eyes half closed, purring softly. Emily knelt beside it, gently stroking its tiny head. "I can't believe Charlie noticed it. How did he know?" Dan smiled thoughtfully. "Animals have a way of sensing things we can't. Charlie saw something we didn't. He knew that Kitten needed help." Emily nodded slowly, her heart swelling with gratitude. She glanced through the office window, watching Charlie swing playfully from branch to branch, carefree once again. The days passed, and the story of Charlie and the kitten became a favorite tale among zoo visitors. People came from miles away to see the chimp who had saved a tiny kitten. Charlie seemed oblivious to the attention, content to spend his days playing, eating, and napping in the sun. But Emily never forgot. She adopted the kitten, naming it Lucky, and visited Charlie often, bringing pictures of the growing kitten to show him. Each time, Charlie would approach the glass, studying the images carefully, as if understanding the bond he'd helped create. Months later, on a quiet afternoon, Emily stood alone at the primate exhibit, watching Charlie lounge lazily in the shade. Lucky, now healthy and playful, was curled up at home, safe and loved. Emily placed her hand gently against the glass, smiling warmly at Charlie. The chimp gazed back at her, his eyes calm and knowing. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice filled with emotion. "You taught me something important. You showed me how much we can learn if we just pay attention to the world around us." Charlie tilted his head slightly, as if understanding her words. Then, with a gentle huff, he turned and ambled away, joining his companions in the warmth of the afternoon sun. Emily stood quietly for a moment longer, reflecting on the extraordinary event that had changed her life. It was a simple momentone chimp, one kitten, one backpack, but it had taught her a powerful lesson about compassion, empathy, and the silent language of animals. As she left the zoo that day, Emily knew she would carry Charlie's lesson with her always. She would pay closer attention to the quiet gestures, the subtle signs, the hidden messages all around her, because sometimes the most important messages are the ones spoken without words.